My hands wouldn't stop shaking. 3 attempts to fasten the pearl clasp at my throat before it finally caught. My fingers clumsy with exhaustion, I could feel in every bone, every joint, every breath that the corset wouldn't quite allow me to take fully. The Grand Royal Ball had been announced 6 weeks ago, which meant 6 weeks of Edmund's preparations, teaching me to smile correctly, stand correctly, be correctly invisible beside him. I needed to be perfect tonight. Perfect or else. With the bruises on my ribs still tender from Tuesday's lesson, I adjusted my cream-colored gown, catching my reflection in the full-length mirror. Hollow eyes stared back at me. When had I started looking this haunted? I turned away before I could answer that question. Hair arranged in elaborate curls that Edmund's maid had styled, pinning each strand with painful precision. The gown hung loose on a frame that had lost too much weight too quickly. I'd been eating 1 meal every 2 days for the past month. Easier to accept the portions Edmund permitted than face his displeasure at dinner. Cheaper to skip meals entirely than risk another correction about my figure. The Grand Royal Palace. The words should have excited me once. Before the betrothal. Before Edmund. Before I learned that fairy tales were just stories we told to make the cages seem prettier. This palace wasn't salvation. It was theatre. And tonight, I was Edmund's best performance. Proof that Lady Victoria Ashford was a dutiful, grateful bride-to-be. I heard Edmund's voice in the hallway, dismissing servants with that pleasant tone he used in public. The same voice that would turn to ice the moment we were alone. I pretended to adjust my gloves, buying seconds before I'd have to face him. Victoria. He appeared in the doorway, resplendent in formal black with the Blackwell crest embroidered in silver. To anyone else, he looked like every woman's dream, handsome, wealthy, refined. To me, he looked like the man who'd grabbed my arm hard enough to leave fingerprints when I'd spoken without permission at last week's dinner party. You look acceptable. Remember, smile, but not too much. Speak only when addressed directly. And for heaven's sake, don't embarrass me in front of the king. Yes, Edmund. The response came automatically. I'd learned months ago that agreement was survival. His eyes narrowed, studying me for flaws. Then he smiled, the expression never reaching those cold blue eyes, and offered his arm. Shall we? The journey to the palace felt like walking toward my own execution. Edmund's carriage, Edmund's driver, Edmund's hand proprietarily on my knee as we rode. When had I stopped being a person and become a possession? The answer was obvious. The day our families signed the betrothal contract. Outside, winter wind cut through my thin shawl. I should have asked for my heavier cloak this morning, but Edmund had chosen this ensemble specifically. We want you to look delicate, not bundled like a peasant. Better to freeze than question his decisions. The palace emerged from the darkness like something from a dream, golden windows blazing, towers reaching toward stars, the scent of pine and winter roses drifting from the grounds. Under different circumstances, I might have found it beautiful. Tonight, it felt like a stage where I'd be forced to perform my happiness while my body screamed the truth. The ballroom stole what little breath my corset allowed. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across marble floors so polished they reflected the crowd like mirrors. Hundreds of nobles in silks and satins, jewels glittering at throats and wrists, the orchestra playing something classical and perfect. Everyone looked happy. Everyone looked safe. Everyone was lying, just like me. Edmund's grip on my arm tightened as we entered, a warning disguised as gentlemanly attention. I pasted on the smile he'd approved, the one that said I was honored to be here, grateful for his family's consideration, desperately in love with the man beside me. The lies came easier with practice. We made our rounds. Edmund's business associates, his father's political allies, other noble families whose names I struggled to remember through the fog in my head. Each conversation required energy I didn't have. Each smile cost something I couldn't afford to spend. When had I last eaten? Yesterday afternoon, maybe. The half portion of soup Edmund had permitted at lunch, watching with those calculating eyes as I'd forced down every spoonful to prove my gratitude. My stomach had stopped growling days ago, replaced by a hollow ache I'd learned to ignore. Hello friends. Before we journey deeper into Victoria's story, I invite you to subscribe and share in the comments where you're listening from. Your presence here matters. Now, let's continue. The evening stretched like torture. Standing, smiling, pretending the room wasn't starting to tilt dangerously. Edmund pulled me onto the dance floor for the third time, his hand at my waist pressing exactly where I knew the bruises bloomed purple beneath the gown's boning. Not hard enough to make me cry out. Just enough to remind me who controlled even my pain. "You're doing well," he murmured against my ear as we waltzed. "Keep it up, and tonight might pass without incident." The threat in his praise made my throat tight. I focused on the steps, on breathing, on staying conscious through sheer force of will. The chandelier above blurred, crystals fragmenting into stars. The orchestra sounded distant, underwater. Sweat broke out on my forehead despite the winter chill from the tall windows. I was going to faint. I recognized the signs professionally from the medical texts in my family's library, even as I experienced them personally. Tunnel vision, nausea, weakness spreading through my limbs like ice water. Not here, not now. Not in front of the entire court. Not in front of the Alpha King himself, who I'd glimpsed earlier on his throne, dark and imposing and impossibly distant. The music swelled. Edmund spun me with practiced precision. My vision grayed at the edges. "Get through this dance, Victoria. Just get through this dance. Curtsy. Smile. Survive another night." Edmund released me as the song ended, already turning toward his next political target. I swayed, grabbing for the pillar beside me. My hand missed. My knees buckled. I fell, but I didn't hit the marble floor. Strong arms caught me, pulling me against a solid chest. My head lolled against fabric that smelled like winter pine and something else, something wild and safe and completely foreign. The ballroom had gone silent. I could feel hundreds of eyes watching, but all I could focus on was the warmth holding me upright. "Are you hurt?" The voice was deep, resonant, with authority that made the words both question and command. Through half-closed eyes, I saw him. Dark hair with silver at the temples, sharp features carved from granite, eyes so green they seemed to glow in the chandelier light, focused on me with an intensity that should have been frightening but somehow wasn't. He was tall, even in my compromised state. I could tell he was well over 6 feet, broad-shouldered in formal black. Embroidered with silver wolves, radiating power that made the air around him seem charged. Alpha King Ronin Silvercrest. I'd just fainted into the arms of the realm's most powerful shifter. His hand moved, carefully adjusting his hold. That's when his fingers brushed my upper arm. His entire body went rigid. Those green eyes fixed on something I couldn't see, then slowly, deliberately, shifted to wolf gold. My sleeve had slipped when he caught me. The bruises on my upper arm were exposed, 4 distinct ovals in purple and yellow, finger-shaped, unmistakable even in the golden ballroom light. I saw recognition flash across his face. Not confusion or curiosity. Recognition like he'd seen this before, like he knew exactly what those marks meant, like something ancient and furious was waking behind his eyes. The ballroom held its breath. Somewhere in the crowd, Edmund was watching, calculating, preparing his excuses. But the Alpha King's gaze never left the evidence on my skin. When he spoke again, his voice carried through the absolute silence, quiet but sharp enough to cut stone. "Who hurt you?" The question hung in the air like a blade suspended above my head. Every noble in the grand royal ballroom waited for my answer. Every pair of eyes watched the Alpha King hold me in his arms, watched his wolf gold gaze fixed on the bruises he shouldn't have seen, shouldn't have noticed, shouldn't have cared about. I should say something. Anything. A lie about clumsiness, a fall down the manor stairs, anything to deflect the weight of that question. But Alpha King Ronin Silvercrest still held me, and his wolf was so close to the surface I could feel the preternatural power radiating from him like heat from a forge. You cannot lie to an Alpha King. Not directly. Not when he's touching you. Not when his wolf has already scented the truth in your fear. My silence condemned me, and saved me, all at once. Your Majesty. Edmund's voice cut through the tension, smooth as silk and just as deceptive. He pushed through the crowd, his expression the perfect mask of concern. My betrothed, She's simply overwhelmed by the honor of your presence. Victoria has always been delicate, prone to spells when she overexerts. I didn't ask you. Ronin's words were quiet, but they carried the weight of absolute authority. His eyes never left my face. Lady Victoria. Who hurt you? It wasn't a question anymore. It was a command, spoken with the power of an alpha who could compel truth from anyone in his realm. My lips parted, the words wanting to spill out despite every survival instinct screaming at me to stay silent. My voice came out broken, weak. The ballroom spun again. She needs medical attention. Ronin stood in one fluid motion, lifting me as though I weighed nothing, one arm under my knees, the other supporting my back. Someone fetch Dr. Winters. Now. Your Majesty, I assure you, I can care for my betrothed. Edmund reached for me, his smile still in place but his eyes promising consequences later. Ronin shifted, angling his body to keep me away from Edmund's grasp. Something dangerous flickered across the Alpha King's face. Your betrothed is under royal care pending examination. You may leave. The dismissal was absolute. Edmund's mask slipped for just a moment. I saw the fury, the calculation, the promise of retribution in his eyes before he smoothed it away. Of course, Your Majesty. I only wish to ensure Victoria receives the best attention. She will. Ronin's tone left no room for argument. Guards, escort Lord Blackwell from the medical wing. He is not to enter until I permit it. 2 palace guards materialized, their presence a clear dismissal. Edmund had no choice but to bow stiffly and retreat, though his gaze found mine across the ballroom. The message was clear. This wasn't over. Ronin carried me through corridors that blurred together. Polished wood, tapestries depicting ancient battles, sconces casting golden light that made everything feel dreamlike. I should protest, should demand to be put down, should worry about the scandal of being carried through the palace by the king himself. Instead, I let my head rest against his shoulder, too exhausted to fight. Stay with me. His voice rumbled through his chest where my ear pressed against the fabric. Just a little longer. The medical wing was all white marble and soft lighting. A woman appeared, silver-streaked blonde hair pulled back, wearing practical clothing that suggested competence rather than ceremony. Her eyes were amber, wolf eyes, I realized with a start. Dr. Helena Winters. She took in my state with one sweeping glance. Your Majesty, set her on the examination table. Gently. Ronin placed me down as though I might shatter, his hands lingering a moment longer than necessary. She fainted. Hasn't eaten properly. And there are bruises. Helena's expression hardened. She'd seen this before too. I'll need privacy to examine her properly. I'll be right outside. Ronin looked at me, and something in his gaze made my throat tight. You're safe here. I promise you that. The door closed behind him. Helena moved with efficient gentleness, checking my pulse, my temperature, looking into my eyes with a small light. I'm going to examine the bruises now. May I? I nodded, unable to speak past the knot in my throat. Her fingers were careful as she helped me out of the gown's elaborate sleeves, revealing the full extent of the damage. Fingerprint bruises on both upper arms. Marks on my ribs where the corset had pressed against existing injuries. Older bruises fading to yellow on my collarbone. Helena said nothing at first, just documented everything with clinical precision. But I saw her jaw tighten, saw the flash of gold in her eyes that meant her wolf was close to the surface too. How long? She finally asked, her voice gentle despite the fury I could sense beneath. 2 years. The admission came out as a whisper. Since the betrothal was announced. And your family? They say marriage requires compromise. I laughed, and it came out broken. That I should be grateful for the Blackwell alliance. Helena set down her instruments and pulled a chair close, sitting so we were eye level. Victoria, I need you to hear this clearly. What's been done to you is not compromise. It's not correction or discipline or any other word they've used to make it acceptable. It's abuse. Do you understand? Tears pricked my eyes. I'd stopped crying months ago, train myself out of it because crying only made Edmund angrier. But something about this stranger's directness, the lack of judgment in her tone, cracked something inside me. I don't know how to leave, I whispered. The contract. The king has invoked the right of royal sanctuary. Helena took my hand, her grip warm and steady. It's an ancient law that allows the crown to protect those in immediate danger. You cannot be removed from palace grounds without his express permission. Edmund Blackwell has no power here. The words didn't feel real. Safety didn't feel real. He'll find a way. He always. Not this time. Ronan's voice came from the doorway. He must have been listening. Dr. Winters, her condition. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, multiple contusions in various stages of healing indicating prolonged physical trauma. Helena's clinical tone made the horror of it somehow worse. She needs rest, proper nutrition, and time to recover. Weeks, minimum. Ronan's expression was carved from stone, but his eyes burned with barely contained rage. She'll have it. Lady Victoria, I'm moving you to the guest quarters in the East Wing. You'll have your own rooms, your own staff, whatever you need. The betrothal contract, I started, is being reviewed by my legal counsel as we speak. He stepped closer, and despite his obvious fury, his voice gentled. Edmund Blackwell will file protests. He'll claim I'm overstepping, interfering in noble arrangements. But I am the law in this realm, and I will not return you to someone who's been systematically destroying you. Why? The question escaped before I could stop it. Why do you care? Something painful flickered across his face. Because I failed someone once. I won't fail you. 2 hours later, I stood in quarters that were larger than my family's entire manor house. Silk curtains, plush carpets, a bed that could fit 4 people, and a bathroom with a tub deep enough to drown in. A maid had brought clothing, soft nightgowns, robes, slippers that looked like clouds. I locked the door. Something I controlled. Something I decided. Then I sat on the edge of that massive bed and let myself cry for the first time in months. Not from fear or pain, but from the strange, terrifying feeling of being safe. Even if only for tonight. Even if it couldn't possibly last. Sunlight woke me. Real sunlight, not the grey dawn that filtered through the small window of my manor room. I opened my eyes to unfamiliar golden light streaming through silk curtains, illuminating walls I didn't recognize, furniture I'd never seen before. For a moment, panic seized me. Where was I? How did I get here? What would Edmund say? Before memory crashed back. The ball. The collapse. The Alpha King's question echoing through the silent ballroom. Who hurt you? I sat up slowly, half expecting my body to protest, but the exhaustion that had weighed on me for months felt lighter somehow. As though one night of genuine rest had begun healing something I'd thought was permanently broken. A knock sounded at the door. My heart jumped before a voice called softly, Lady Victoria? I've brought breakfast. Not Edmund. Never Edmund again, if what Dr. Winters said was true. Come in, I managed. A young woman entered carrying a silver tray laden with more food than I'd seen in weeks. Toast with butter and jam, fresh fruit that gleamed like jewels, soft eggs, tea that smelled of herbs and honey. She set it on the small table by the window, curtsying quickly. I'm Anne, my lady. I've been assigned to attend you during your stay. If you need anything at all, you need only ask. Thank you. The words felt strange. When had I last been offered help without conditions attached? And left, and I approached the food cautiously, as though it might disappear if I reached too quickly. The first bite of toast made my stomach clench, too rich after weeks of near starvation. But I forced myself to eat slowly, carefully, the way a body learns to accept nourishment after deprivation. I was halfway through the meal when another knock came. Firmer this time. Lady Victoria, it's Alpha King Ronin. May I enter? My hand froze halfway to my mouth. The king. In my quarters. Yesterday felt like a fever dream. Had it really happened? Had he really invoked ancient law to protect me? Yes, Your Majesty. He entered, and I was struck again by his presence. In formal attire last night, he'd been imposing. In simple black clothing this morning, shirt and trousers that suggested he'd already been working, he was somehow more intimidating. Power radiated from him like heat, barely contained. I apologize for the early intrusion. His eyes scanned me, assessing. I wanted to check on your condition. I'm well. Better. Thank you for. I gestured vaguely at the room, the food, the impossible safety of it all. For all of this. He moved to the window, standing with his back to me as though giving me space. Victoria, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Not for legal proceedings, yet. Not for evidence. Just so I understand what we're dealing with. The "we" made my chest tight. When had anyone included themselves in my suffering? What do you want to know? Tell me everything. From the beginning. So I did. The words came haltingly at first, then faster, like poison finally being drawn from a wound. I told him about the arranged betrothal between the Ashford and Blackwell families, designed to merge our lands and strengthen both houses politically. How Edmund had been charming during courtship, flowers, poetry, promises of partnership and respect. The change happened the day after the contracts were signed, I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. We were at dinner with both families. I laughed at something his father said, too loudly, apparently. Edmund excused us to the garden. He said I'd embarrassed him, made him look like he couldn't control his future wife. Then he slapped me. Ronan's entire body had gone rigid, but he didn't turn, didn't interrupt. I was so shocked, I just stood there. He apologized immediately, said the stress of the betrothal had made him act out of character, swore it would never happen again. I laughed bitterly. It happened again 3 days later. Then again. Each time with a new excuse, a new reason why I'd forced his hand. The escalation had been methodical. Slaps became grabs that left bruises. Grabs became shoves. He learned exactly where to strike to cause maximum pain while leaving minimal visible evidence. My upper arms, my ribs, my back, places my clothing would cover. Places I'd learned to hide. He started controlling my meals 6 months ago, I continued. Said I was getting soft, that the Blackwell name required a wife of certain standards. Some days he'd permit half portions. Other days, nothing at all. He called it helping me maintain discipline. I told him about the isolation. How Edmund gradually cut me off from friends, claiming they were bad influences. How he monitored my correspondence, my movements, who I spoke to and when. How my own parents dismissed my concerns with platitudes about marital compromise and family duty. They needed the Blackwell alliance, I said flatly. My comfort was less important than political advantage. Finally, Ronan turned. His eyes were pure gold, his wolf fully present and barely controlled. How many times did you try to leave? Twice. The first time, I made it as far as my family's estate. My father sent me back with a lecture about honoring commitments. The second time, my voice caught. Edmund found me at the coaching inn. He was so angry, I pulled up my sleeve, showing a faint scar on my forearm. He said if I ever tried again, it would be worse. I believed him. The silence stretched between us, heavy with things unsaid. Then Ronan crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt before my chair, putting himself at my eye level. The gesture was so unexpected, so contrary to every protocol about royalty, that I froze. I failed someone once, he said quietly. My mate, Oriana. She was suffering, and I didn't see it until it was too late. I won't fail you, Victoria. I swear on my crown, on my wolf, on everything I am, Edmund Blackwell will never touch you again. Before I could respond, and rushed in without knocking, her face pale. Your Majesty, I apologize for the interruption, but a messenger just arrived from the Blackwell estate. Ronan stood smoothly. What does he want? Lord Blackwell has filed a formal petition with the royal court. Anne's voice shook. His claiming Lady Victoria is mentally unwell from the stress of wedding preparations. His demanding her immediate return to his custody, citing the betrothal contract as legally binding. And she swallowed hard. His threatening financial penalties against the crown for interference in noble family matters. Ice flooded my veins. He'll win. The contracts were signed by both families, witnessed by. He won't win. Ronan's voice was absolute. Let him file whatever petitions he wants. I am the law in this realm, and I will not return you to your abuser regardless of what contracts were signed. He looked at Anne. When is the hearing scheduled? 2 weeks, Your Majesty. Good. That gives us time to build a case that will destroy him. He turned back to me. Victoria, I need your permission to have my investigators look into Edmund's background. Everything, his finances, his prior relationships, his family's dealings. Will you allow it? Yes. The word came out stronger than I expected. Yes. Do whatever you need to do. Something like approval flickered in his eyes. Then we begin. 1 week in the palace, and my body began remembering what it meant to be alive. Dr. Helena visited daily, monitoring my recovery with the precision of someone who'd treated trauma before. The bruises faded from purple to yellow to green, following the natural progression of healing that Edmund had never allowed to complete. My weight began returning slowly as my stomach adjusted to regular meals. The hollow ache in my bones gradually eased. But other things were changing too. Strange things I couldn't explain. My hearing has gotten sharper, I told Helena during our 5th session. She was checking my vitals while I sat on the examination table in the medical wing. I can hear conversations from rooms away. And yesterday, I could smell what the kitchens were preparing from 3 floors up. Helena's hands stilled on my wrist where she'd been checking my pulse. What else? I've been having dreams. Running through forests on 4 legs, seeing the world in colors I don't have names for. And my reflection, I hesitated, uncertain how to describe what I'd seen this morning. My eyes looked different. More gold than hazel. Helena set down her instruments and pulled a chair close, the same way she had the first night. Victoria, there's something you need to know about your bloodline. Something your family has likely kept hidden for generations. Dread and curiosity warred in my chest. What do you mean? You carry dormant shifter blood. She said it matter-of-factly, the way someone might announce the weather. I sensed it the first time I examined you, but I wanted to be certain before saying anything. The signs are all there, the healing rate slightly faster than human normal, the sensitivity to certain herbs, the bone structure. You have wolf ancestry, likely from a grandmother or great-grandmother whose heritage was suppressed. The words didn't make sense. That's impossible. My family is fully human. We have records going back. Records can be altered. Helena's tone was gentle but firm. It wasn't uncommon for noble families to hide shifter bloodlines if they thought it would damage their social standing. They'd marry it out over generations, hoping the traits would disappear. Her amber eyes met mine. But dormant doesn't mean gone. It means sleeping. And Victoria, I think your wolf has been protecting you all along, keeping you alive through starvation and abuse that would have killed a fully human woman weeks ago. My hands started shaking. Edmund's family, did they know? That's what I suspect. The Blackwells have been attempting to breed shifter abilities back into their line for decades. Their own bloodline is too diluted, too far removed from the source. They've been seeking brides with dormant traits, trying to strengthen their children's chances of carrying the wolf. Her expression hardened. And when those brides didn't produce the results they wanted, they eliminated them. The first betrothed. The riding accident. I wasn't chosen despite being human. I was chosen because I'm not. Edmund's abuse wasn't just cruelty, Helena said. It was strategic. Keeping you weak, malnourished, afraid, it prevented your wolf from awakening. A shifter under severe stress can't access their abilities. The body shuts down the transformation to conserve energy for survival. Rage flooded through me, hot and fierce. Everything, every slap, every missed meal, every degradation, had been calculated to keep me from discovering what I was. To keep me controllable. My voice came out hoarse. Can I access it now? My wolf. Helena smiled. With proper training and nutrition, yes. Your body is finally strong enough to attempt a shift. But Victoria, it won't be easy. Years of suppression means your wolf will be frightened, untrusting. She's been caged as long as you have. I want to try. That night, Helena led me to the palace training grounds, a vast courtyard bordered by high walls, private enough that no one would witness if I failed. The moon hung full and heavy overhead, calling to something deep in my bones. Alpha King Ronin waited by the fountain, dressed in simple training clothes. His presence both comforted and unsettled me. Since our conversation 3 days ago, he'd been respectful but distant, always maintaining proper protocol. Yet I'd caught him watching me during meals, his expression unreadable. You don't have to do this tonight, he said as I approached. There's no rush. Yes, there is. I stood before him, refusing to look away from those intense green eyes. Edmund kept me weak and ignorant for 2 years. I won't let him have another day. Something like pride flickered across his face. Then let's begin. Helena guided me through the basics, breathing exercises, meditation to connect with the wolf I'd never known existed. Don't force it, she instructed. Just listen. Your wolf has been trying to reach you for years. Let her know it's finally safe. I closed my eyes, focusing inward. At first, there was nothing but my own frantic heartbeat. Then, gradually, I felt it, a presence that wasn't quite separate from me but wasn't quite the same either. Ancient, patient, furious. Finally, a voice whispered in my mind. Not words exactly, but understanding. Finally, you hear me. She's there, I breathed. I can feel her. Good. Ronin's voice was closer now, and I opened my eyes to find him standing just a few feet away, his own eyes shifting to gold. Now let her out. Don't fight the change, embrace it. Fear spiked through me. What if I can't? What if there's nothing there? There's everything there. His conviction was absolute. Your wolf has been protecting you all along, Victoria. She's kept you alive when you should have died. She's given you strength when you had nothing left. Let her show you what you truly are. I took a deep breath and surrendered control. Pain exploded through my body, but not the pain of injury. This was transformation, bone and muscle remembering an ancient pattern. My hands shifted first, fingers elongating into claws that gleamed silver in the moonlight. My senses sharpened impossibly. I could smell Helena's surprise, Ronin's encouragement, the night-blooming flowers in the garden 3 courtyards away. Golden light flashed in my vision as my eyes changed. The partial shift held for only seconds before exhaustion forced me back, but those seconds were enough. I staggered, and Ronin caught me before I could fall. Easy. First shifts are draining. Did you see? I looked up at him, breathless with wonder and terror. I have claws. My wolf, she's real. She's magnificent. His voice was rough with emotion. And she's been waiting for you. Helena approached with water, but I barely noticed. I was staring at my hands, human again, but I could still feel the ghost of claws beneath the skin. Still feel my wolf's presence, no longer sleeping but awake and aware. Again, I said. I want to try again. Ronin smiled. Tomorrow. Tonight, you rest and let your body adjust. This is just the beginning, Victoria. As he walked me back to my quarters, our shoulders nearly touching in the narrow palace corridor, I realized something had shifted between us. Not just my wolf awakening, but something else. Something neither of us had acknowledged yet. Thank you, I said at my door. For believing me. For helping me find this. He looked at me with those intense eyes, and for a moment, I thought he might say something significant. Instead, he simply nodded. Sleep well, Lady Victoria. But as I lay in bed that night, my wolf content and settled for the first time in my life, I could still feel the warmth of his hand where he'd steadied me. Some awakenings, I realized, came in more than one form. I found him in the palace library 3 nights after my first shift. I hadn't meant to, couldn't sleep, had wandered the corridors with my newly awakened senses cataloguing every sound and scent. But something drew me to the library's massive oak doors, and when I pushed them open, I found Alpha King Ronin standing before a portrait I'd never noticed before. A woman looked down from the gilded frame. Beautiful in an ethereal way, silver blonde hair, grey eyes, a smile that seemed hesitant even in paint. She wore a crown of winter roses and a gown of deep blue. Queen's colors. Oriana. Ronin's voice was rough, as though he'd been standing here for hours. He didn't turn, but I knew he'd sensed my presence the moment I entered. My mate. Dead 3 years this week. I should leave, give him privacy with his grief. Instead, I moved closer, my bare feet silent on the marble floor. You mentioned her once. That you'd failed someone. I did more than fail her. He finally looked at me, and the raw pain in his eyes made my chest ache. I was complicit in her destruction. I just didn't know it until she was gone. Tell me. The words came out soft, an invitation rather than demand. Please. He turned back to the portrait, and for a long moment, I thought he wouldn't speak. Then the story came, each word carved from grief and guilt. Oriana was the daughter of the Northern Pack Alpha. Our marriage was political, uniting the crown with the most powerful pack in the realm. But she tried to make it real. She was kind, intelligent, eager to be a good queen. His jaw tightened. I was too busy being king to notice when that eagerness turned to desperation. I stayed silent, letting him find his own pace. She became withdrawn about a year into our marriage. Anxious, fearful of disappointing me. I thought it was adjustment, the pressure of the crown, the public scrutiny. I encouraged her to confide in my beta, Marcus. He'd been my closest friend since childhood, someone I trusted absolutely. Ronin's hands clenched into fists. I didn't know he was systematically destroying her. What did he do? Psychological warfare, mostly. Convinced her she was inadequate as queen, too weak, too simple. He'd praise her in public, then tear her down in private. Made her question every decision, every word, every thought. Isolated her from the other pack members by suggesting they were mocking her behind her back. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. He told her I was ashamed of her. That I regretted our bond. That I was planning to dissolve the marriage. My wolf stirred, recognizing the tactics. It's what abusers do. Make you believe you're the problem. She started taking risks, Ronin continued. Dangerous risks, trying to prove herself worthy. She'd volunteer for hunts she wasn't trained for, push herself beyond her limits. I noticed but thought it was confidence building. I encouraged it. The self-loathing in his tone was palpable. The day she died, she joined a hunt in the northern mountains. Treacherous terrain even for experienced shifters. She fell trying to navigate a cliff face that should have been avoided entirely. And Marcus? I discovered the truth 3 months after her death. One of Oriana's ladies-in-waiting finally came forward with evidence. Letters Marcus had written, supposedly from me, filled with criticisms and disappointments that were never mine. Witnesses to his private conversations with Oriana, where he'd poisoned her against me and herself. Ronin's eyes flashed gold. By the time I pieced it together, he'd fled the kingdom. I've had trackers searching for 3 years. Nothing. The portrait seemed to watch us, that hesitant smile now heartbreaking in context. A woman who'd been systematically destroyed by someone she trusted, whose mate had been too blind to see. You didn't fail her, I said quietly. He betrayed you both. Ronin turned to me sharply. I should have seen it. The signs were there, the anxiety, the withdrawal, the desperate need for approval. I was her mate. I should have known. Edmund had my own family convinced I was dramatic and difficult. I moved to stand beside him, both of us facing the portrait now. Abusers are skilled at deception. They isolate their victims from support systems, make everyone doubt the truth. You're not responsible for Marcus's choices. I was responsible for protecting her. I failed. No. I reached out, tentatively touching his arm. You were deceived by someone you trusted. There's a difference. Edmund spent 2 years making me believe I deserved his cruelty, that I was too sensitive, too flawed, too much trouble. I believed him because he was that convincing. Your beater did the same to Oriana, and to you. Ronan looked at my hand on his arm, then at my face. How do you do that? Do what? Understand. Without judgment or platitudes. His voice softened. Most people tell me to move on, that it wasn't my fault. You actually understand why that doesn't help. Because I carry the same guilt. I dropped my hand but didn't step away. I keep thinking about all the times I could have fought back, could have left, could have told someone who might have actually helped. The what ifs are endless. But you're here now. Fighting back. So are you. I held his gaze. You invoked ancient law to protect me. You're building a case against Edmund despite political consequences. You're helping me discover my wolf. That's not failure, Ronan. That's redemption. Something shifted in his expression, vulnerability giving way to something warmer, more present. When I caught you at the ball, when I saw those bruises, he stopped, seeming to search for words. I thought, not again. Not another woman destroyed while everyone pretends not to see. You saw me, I said simply. That's what matters. Before either of us could say more, rapid footsteps echoed in the corridor. A palace guard burst through the library doors, slightly out of breath. Your Majesty, I apologize for the interruption. The royal investigators have returned with urgent findings. Ronan's entire demeanor shifted, personal pain locked away behind the Alpha King's authority. Where? The throne room, sire. They insisted you see this immediately. We followed the guard through midnight corridors to the throne room, where 3 investigators waited with stacks of documents spread across a table. The lead investigator, a stern woman named Captain Thorne, bowed quickly. Your Majesty, Lady Victoria, we've uncovered information regarding Lord Edmund Blackwell's prior betrothals. My stomach clenched. The women before me. Yes. Captain Thorne laid out several documents. 5 years ago, Edmund was betrothed to Lady Catherine Whitmore. She died in what was ruled a riding accident. However, we've discovered financial records showing payments made by the Blackwell estate to the Whitmore family's stable master 3 days before her death. Ronan leaned over the documents, his expression darkening. Bribery. We believe so. The stable master disappeared shortly after Lady Catherine's death. We found him living in a coastal village under an assumed name. With immunity offered, he confessed. Captain Thorne's voice was tight with controlled anger. Lord Edmund paid him to tamper with Lady Catherine's saddle. The accident was arranged. Horror washed over me in waves. He murdered her. There's more. Captain Thorne produced another file. Edmund's second betrothed, Lady Margaret Ashton, entered a convent 2 years ago and took vows of silence. Our investigators convinced the Mother Superior to allow us to speak with her. Lady Margaret agreed to testify. She handed me a written statement. I read it with trembling hands, detailed accounts of abuse matching my own experience, escalating over months until Margaret had fled in the night, seeking sanctuary in the church rather than risk ending up like Lady Catherine. The pattern is clear, Captain Thorne continued. The Blackwell family has been using these marriages to attempt breeding shifter abilities into their bloodline. When the women failed to produce the desired results, or became too damaged to be useful, they were eliminated or silenced. And my family knew. The realization hit like a physical blow. They sold me to a murderer knowing what he was. Ronan's hand found my shoulder, steady and grounding. We have enough evidence now for an arrest warrant. Multiple charges, assault, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud regarding the betrothal contracts. He'll try to run, I said. The moment he knows. Then we move tonight. Ronan's eyes flashed gold. Captain Thorne, dispatch your fastest riders to the Blackwell estate. I want Edmund in custody by dawn. As the investigators hurried to comply, I stared at the evidence spread before us, proof that I'd been one in a series, that my suffering had been calculated, that I'd very likely be next on Edmund's list of eliminated problems. Victoria. Ronan turned me to face him. You're going to testify against him. In front of the entire royal court. Are you prepared for that? Terror and determination warred in my chest. Standing before the court meant facing Edmund again, meant publicly admitting everything he'd done, meant being examined and questioned and doubted. It also meant justice. Not just for me, but for Catherine and Margaret and whoever else had suffered at his hands. Yes, I said firmly. I'm ready. Dawn broke over the palace, and I couldn't eat. And had brought breakfast an hour ago, eggs, toast, fruit arranged beautifully on porcelain, but it sat untouched while I stared at the gown laid across my bed. Deep blue silk, the color of the royal family. Not the pale, demure colors Edmund had insisted upon. Not cream or white or anything designed to make me invisible. This was armor disguised as silk. He's been demanding to see you for 3 days, Dr. Helena said from her position by the window. She'd stayed with me last night, sensing I needed support. The legal counsel finally convinced the king that denying the request could damage the case. Edmund's advocates are claiming he's being denied basic rights to communication with his betrothed. So I have to face him. My hands shook as I reached for the gown. In the throne room. With witnesses. With the Alpha King 3 feet away from you at all times, Helena corrected. With palace guards at every door. With me in attendance as your physician. Edmund can't touch you, Victoria. He can only speak. But words had always been Edmund's sharpest weapon. He knew exactly what to say to make me doubt myself, to make me feel small and worthless and deserving of whatever he chose to inflict. A knock sounded. Ronan's voice came through the door. Victoria? May I come in? Helena opened the door for him. He entered already dressed formally, black tunic embroidered with silver wolves, the crown of the realm on his dark hair. Every inch the Alpha King, powerful and commanding. His eyes softened when they found mine. How are you feeling? Terrified. No point in lying. He knows exactly how to get inside my head. Then we'll get him out again. Ronan crossed to where I stood, close enough that I could feel his warmth. Listen to me carefully. Edmund is going to try every manipulation tactic he knows. He'll apologize, he'll make excuses, he'll attempt to convince you that you misunderstood or overreacted. When that fails, he'll get angry. Try to intimidate you back into compliance. I know. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. But here's what he doesn't know. You're not the woman he broke anymore. Ronan's intensity pinned me in place. You've discovered your wolf. You've begun healing. You've chosen to fight back. He's going to see that the moment you walk into that throne room, and it's going to shake him. What if I freeze? What if I can't speak? Then I'll speak for you. His promise was absolute. But I don't think you will. I think you're stronger than you've ever allowed yourself to be. The throne room was designed to intimidate. Vaulted ceilings that made voices echo, massive windows letting in harsh morning light, the Alpha King's throne raised on a dais that forced everyone else to look up. Normally used for formal audiences and royal proclamations, today it felt like a courtroom. Edmund stood in the center, flanked by 2 palace guards. He'd dressed impeccably, dark suit perfectly tailored, hair groomed, expression schooled into concern and confusion. To anyone who didn't know better, he looked like a worried fiancé desperate to understand why his beloved had been taken from him. I knew better. I saw the calculation in his eyes, the fury beneath the careful mask. Ronan sat on his throne, and I stood to his right, a position of honor that wasn't lost on anyone present. Edmund's gaze raked over me, and I saw his jaw tighten at the blue gown, at my unbound hair in the style of unmated shifter females, at the way I stood tall instead of hunched in fear. Lord Edmund Blackwell. Ronan's voice carried absolute authority. You requested this audience. Speak. Edmund's expression softened into practiced concern. Your Majesty, I'm grateful for the opportunity. I've been beside myself with worry for Victoria. His eyes found mine. My darling, are you well? They told me you fainted at the ball. I've been so concerned. Lady Victoria is recovering, Ronan interrupted coldly. Under the care of the royal physician. State your purpose. Edmund's mask flickered, just for a second, before smoothing back into place. I only want to understand what's happened. Victoria and I are betrothed, contracts signed by both families. Yet she's been kept here for over a week, and I've been denied any contact. Surely you can understand my confusion. There's no confusion. I spoke before Ronan could, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. I'm under royal protection because you've been systematically abusing me for 2 years. Edmund's eyes went cold, though his expression remained concerned. Victoria, sweetheart, you know you get confused when you're tired. The stress of wedding preparations has been overwhelming for you. Don't. The word came out sharp. Don't tell me I'm confused or stressed or imagining things. I know what you did. The court knows what you did. The evidence is documented by a royal physician. Surely you're not suggesting that Edmund's voice took on that dangerous quality I knew too well, the one that meant I'd pushed too far. That I would ever harm you? Victoria, we've had disagreements, every couple does, but to accuse me of. You broke my ribs. I stepped forward, feeling Ronan's presence behind me like a shield. You gave me bruises shaped like your fingers. You starved me to maintain discipline. You isolated me from everyone who might have helped. And you did it all while convincing my family that I was the problem. Edmund's careful facade cracked. You're being dramatic. I was helping you become worthy of the Blackwell name. Worthy. My wolf surged forward, and I felt my eyes flash gold. You kept me weak and ignorant because you knew. You knew I carried shifter blood, and you were terrified of what I'd become if I ever accessed it. Edmund went very still. Behind his eyes, I saw calculation turning to fear. You're talking nonsense. Am I? I extended my hand, letting my claws emerge, silver and sharp and undeniable. You chose me specifically because of my dormant bloodline. You and your family have been attempting to breed shifter abilities back into your line for generations. When your previous betrothed didn't give you what you wanted, you eliminated them. That's a lie. Edmund lunged forward, and instantly, 3 things happened. Palace guards grabbed his arms, Ronan rose from his throne with a growl that made the air vibrate, and my wolf surged so close to the surface that my teeth sharpened. Edmund froze, staring at me with something like shock. You can't, you're not. I'm exactly what you tried to destroy. I held his gaze, refusing to look away. But you failed. You kept me in a cage for 2 years, and all you did was make me stronger. Ronan's voice cut through the tension. Edmund Blackwell, you are under arrest for assault, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud regarding betrothal contracts, and violation of the sacred law that prohibits harm to those under shifter protection. Edmund's mask shattered completely. You can't do this. The contracts are legally binding. Her family sold her to a known abuser. Ronan descended from the dais, every inch the predator. The contracts are void. The betrothal is dissolved. And if you ever speak her name again, I will personally ensure you regret it. Guards moved to restrain Edmund fully, but he made one last desperate attempt. He wrenched free and lunged toward me, hand raised. Whether to strike or grab, I'd never know. Because Ronan moved with supernatural speed, intercepting him with a hand around his throat, lifting him off the ground as effortlessly as picking up a child. The Alpha King's eyes were pure gold, his wolf fully present and barely restrained. You will never touch her again. The words were spoken with such lethal intent that Edmund went limp in his grip. You will never see her, speak to her, or think about her. You are nothing. He dropped Edmund into the guard's custody. Edmund was dragged out, still shouting threats and justifications that echoed through the throne room before fading to nothing. Silence fell. My legs started shaking as adrenaline drained away, replaced by the realization of what I'd just done. I'd faced Edmund. I'd spoken truth to him. I'd shown him my wolf, my strength, everything he'd tried to destroy. And I'd survived. Ronan turned to me, his eyes fading back to green. Victoria. I collapsed against him, not unconscious but unable to hold myself up anymore. He caught me easily, arms wrapping around me with infinite gentleness. I did it, I whispered against his chest. I faced him. You were magnificent. His voice was rough with emotion. He has no power over you anymore. Captain Thorne approached, bowing quickly. Your Majesty, we've received word. Edmund was tracked making contact with someone matching Marcus's description 3 months ago. They may have been coordinating. Ronan's arms tightened around me protectively. Find him. I want Marcus in custody before the trial. As guards and officials disposed to their duties, I remained in Ronan's embrace, feeling safe in a way I'd never thought possible. Edmund was in chains. The truth was exposed. Justice was beginning. For the first time in 2 years, I could breathe freely. 1 week after Edmund's arrest, the palace hosted a formal diplomatic dinner. Representatives from allied pacts filled the grand dining hall, alphas and their mates, council members, nobles whose support Ronan needed for the upcoming trial. Politics required the appearance of normalcy, even as the kingdom buzzed with scandal. I'd argued against attending. Edmund has allies in that room. People who benefited from Blackwell influence. Which is exactly why you need to be there. Ronan had been firm. Hiding suggests shame or weakness. You have nothing to be ashamed of, and you're certainly not weak. So I wore another gown in royal blue, deeper than the last, with silver embroidery at the collar that caught the candlelight. My hair was arranged in the style of unmated shifter females, unbound and flowing. A statement that I was no longer betrothed, no longer bound to anyone. The dinner was elaborate, 7 courses, each more ornate than the last. I sat at Ronan's right hand, a position that had caused whispers throughout the court. Not quite queen, but certainly more than a guest under protection. The distinction wasn't lost on anyone. Lady Victoria. The alpha of the Eastern Pack addressed me from across the table. His tone was carefully neutral. We're pleased to see you recovered from your ordeal. Thank you, Alpha Dominic. I kept my voice steady, aware that every word was being weighed and analyzed. The palace physicians have been exceptional. Indeed. His mate, a sharp-eyed woman named Celeste, studied me with interest. We heard rumors about your heritage. That you carry the wolf. Before I could answer, another voice cut in. Lord Ashton, one of Edmund's former associates. Surely such claims are exaggerated. The Ashford line has been documented as purely human for generations. The implication was clear. I was lying about my heritage to justify breaking the betrothal. My wolf stirred, angry at the dismissal. Ronan's hand found mine beneath the table, a brief squeeze of support. Lady Victoria's shifter bloodline has been confirmed by Dr. Helena Winters, my chief physician and a shifter of considerable experience. The documentation is available for anyone who doubts her heritage. Lord Ashton's expression soured, but he said nothing more. The conversation shifted to safer topics, trade agreements, border disputes, anything but the scandal sitting at the king's right hand. I was hyper-aware of everything. My newly awakened senses catalogued every scent in the room, every micro-expression, every shift in posture. Which is why, when the 3rd course was served, something felt wrong. The wine being poured into Ronan's cup smelled off. Not spoiled, something else. Something that made my wolf recoil in instinctive fear. Poison. I didn't think. My hand shot out, knocking the cup from the servant's grasp before it reached Ronan's lips. Wine splashed across the white tablecloth, and the crystal shattered on the marble floor. Silence crashed through the dining hall. Everyone stared at me, shocked, confused, some angry at the disruption. Victoria. Ronan's voice was carefully controlled. What's wrong? The wine. My heart hammered against my ribs. Something's wrong with it. I can smell it, like bitter almonds and something metallic. Understanding flashed in Ronan's eyes. He gestured sharply to the royal taster, a young man whose job was to test all food and drink before it reached the king. Test it. Now. The taster took a small sip of wine from the spilled drops. Within seconds, his face went grey. He stumbled, gasping, and palace physicians rushed forward. Dr. Helena worked quickly, forcing an antidote down his throat while he convulsed. Night's-bane. Helena's voice was grim, mixed with wolfsbane, lethal to shifters within minutes. Chaos erupted. Guards surrounded Ronin, others seized the servant who'd poured the wine, a young woman who'd worked in the palace for months, now pale with terror. I didn't know. Someone told me that bottle was specially requested by His Majesty. Captain Thorne appeared, already barking orders. Lock down the palace. No one leaves until we find who arranged this. I barely heard them. My senses were screaming danger, my wolf pushing against my control, trying to emerge. Something was still wrong. The assassination attempt on Ronin had been a distraction. The real target was me. I smelled him before I saw him, the scent of steel and malice cutting through the perfume and wine. A figure moved through the confused crowd, blade glinting in candlelight. Victoria. Ronin's warning came too late. The assassin was already lunging, knife aimed at my heart. He wore palace servant livery, had probably been waiting weeks for this opportunity. Hired by Edmund or his family or whoever wanted me silenced permanently. Ronin was too far away, blocked by guards and panicking dinner guests. I had maybe 2 seconds before the blade reached me. My wolf surged forward with a force that stole my breath. Ours. Protect ours. Gold exploded across my vision. My body moved with speed I didn't know I possessed, driven by instinct older than thought. I twisted away from the blade, and my hand came up, not human anymore, but shifted, claws extending in a blur of silver. I caught the assassin's wrist, my grip crushing with strength that shocked both of us. His bones cracked audibly. The knife clattered to the floor. Then my other hand shifted too, and I was moving, disarming him, throwing him to the ground with force that should have been impossible for my size. I stood over him, breathing hard, feeling my teeth sharpen, my bones beginning to reshape. The entire dining hall had gone silent. Everyone stared at me, claws extended, eyes burning wolf gold, standing over a fallen assassin with the posture of a predator protecting her territory. My wolf's voice in my mind was clear for the first time. Mine. Protect. Ours. She wasn't just talking about me. She was talking about Ronin, about this place that had become sanctuary, about the life we were building. Lady Victoria. Ronin's voice cut through my wolf's fury. He approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. It's over. You're safe. Let him go. I looked down at the assassin, still pinned beneath my partially shifted form. Guards were rushing forward to take custody. Slowly, I released him and stepped back, my claws retracting, my eyes fading from gold to hazel. The dining hall remained frozen in shock. I'd just publicly shifted, partial, but undeniable. My heritage was no longer something that could be questioned or dismissed. Alpha Dominic was the first to speak. By the old laws, she has the right to defend herself and her pack. He looked directly at me with something like respect. Lady Victoria is clearly one of us. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the shifter representatives. Even those who'd been skeptical now saw proof they couldn't deny. But Lord Ashton stood abruptly, his face twisted with disgust. This is an outrage. She's contaminated noble bloodlines with her deception. Enough. Ronin's voice carried absolute authority, silencing the room. Lady Victoria acted in self-defense against an assassin. She saved my life by detecting the poison. Her heritage is verified and recognized by this crown. His eyes flashed gold as he looked at the assembled nobles. Anyone who questions her place here questions me. The threat was unmistakable. Ronin had just publicly claimed me as under his personal protection. More than sanctuary, more than duty. Something deeper. Captain Thorne dragged the assassin to his feet. He has Edmund Blackwell's family crest tattooed on his arm. This was coordinated. Then Edmund faces additional charges. Ronin's expression was carved from ice. Attempted assassination of the crown. Conspiracy to murder a recognized shifter. These are capital offenses. As guards cleared the room and physicians tended to the poison taster, I stood trembling with adrenaline and shock. I'd shifted. Not fully, but enough. My wolf had emerged to protect not just me, but everything I was beginning to care about. Ronan appeared at my side, his hand gentle on my shoulder. How do you feel? Terrified. Exhilarated. I looked at my hands, normal now but remembering the feel of claws. She's really there. My wolf. She's been there all along. She saved your life tonight. Saved mine too. His voice was rough with emotion. Victoria, what you did was instinct. I met his eyes. I couldn't let them hurt you. Something passed between us in that moment, acknowledgement of feelings neither of us had spoken aloud. But before either could say more, Captain Thorne approached with news that made my stomach drop. Your Majesty, we've apprehended Edmund Blackwell attempting to flee the kingdom. He was heading for the coast with documents and enough gold to start a new life abroad. Where is he now? Irongate Prison. Maximum security. He'll await trial there. Captain Thorne paused. He was raving about how Lady Victoria ruined everything, how she was supposed to be controllable, how his entire plan fell apart because of her. I thought of Catherine, dead in her riding accident. Of Margaret, silenced in a convent. Of how many other women might have suffered if Edmund had succeeded with me. Good, I said firmly. Let him rot there until he faces justice. As the palace settled into tense alertness, guards at every entrance, investigations beginning into how assassins had infiltrated the staff, Ronan walked me back to my quarters. We didn't speak, but his presence was solid and comforting beside me. At my door, I turned to him. Thank you. For believing me. For protecting me. For, my voice caught. For everything. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear with infinite gentleness. You protected yourself tonight, Victoria. You and your wolf together. That's who you've always been beneath everything Edmund tried to destroy. After he left, I stood before my mirror, studying my reflection. My eyes flashed gold as my wolf stirred, content and proud. We'd fought back. We'd won. And somewhere in Irongate Prison, Edmund was finally caged the way he'd caged me for 2 years. Justice was coming. 2 weeks after the assassination attempt, I stood before the Grand Tribunal Hall. The massive doors loomed ahead, and behind them, the entire court waited. Nobles, pack leaders, common witnesses, all assembled to hear testimony against Edmund Blackwell. My testimony. You don't have to do this. Dr. Helena stood beside me, her presence grounding. You've already given written statements. The evidence is overwhelming. I need to. My voice was steady despite the fear crawling up my spine. Catherine can't speak for herself. Margaret spent 2 years silent. If I don't speak, who will? Ronan appeared from a side corridor, formal in his ceremonial robes. His eyes found mine immediately. Ready? No. But I'm doing it anyway. His smile was brief but warm. That's what courage looks like. The doors opened, and we entered together. The tribunal hall was designed for judgment. Tiered seating rose on 3 sides, filled with hundreds of witnesses. Edmund sat in the accused's box, chains on his wrists, flanked by guards. He'd lost weight in Irongate, his expensive clothes now hanging loose, his groomed appearance deteriorated into something gaunt and desperate. But his eyes still held that calculating cruelty. The chief magistrate, a stern woman named Lady Brennan, called the court to order. We gathered to hear charges against Lord Edmund Blackwell, assault, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud regarding betrothal contracts, attempted assassination of the crown, and violation of sacred law prohibiting harm to recognized shifters. Edmund's advocate stood, a slick man named Corwin who'd built his career defending nobles. The accusations are based on the hysterical claims of a woman who was demonstrably unstable during her betrothal. Lady Victoria's family can testify to her dramatic nature. Lady Victoria's family sold her to a known abuser. Ronan's voice cut through the hall like a blade. Their testimony is compromised by complicity. Lady Brennan nodded. Lady Victoria Ashford, please approach. I walked to the witness stand, feeling hundreds of eyes tracking my movement. I wore deep blue again, armor disguised as silk. My hair unbound in the shifter style that had become my statement of freedom. Lady Victoria, Lady Brennan began. Please describe the nature of your relationship with the accused. I took a breath and began. The words came easier than expected. Clinical, detailed, devastating. I described each incident with precision. The first slap for laughing too loudly. The escalation to bruises, then broken ribs. The starvation tactics disguised as discipline. The isolation from anyone who might help. He would tell me I was too sensitive, too difficult, too much trouble. My voice remained steady. That I should be grateful he was willing to teach me how to be worthy of his name. And I believed him. Because abusers are skilled at making you doubt your own reality. Corwin tried to interrupt. Surely the accused was simply attempting to prepare you for the responsibilities of being his next victim. I turned to face Edmund directly. I know about Catherine. About her riding accident that wasn't an accident. About the stable master you paid to tamper with her saddle. I know about Margaret, driven to a convent to escape you. About how your family has been selecting brides with dormant shifter heritage, attempting to breed abilities back into your bloodline. Edmund's mask of false innocence cracked. Lies. All lies from a woman who couldn't handle the honor of silence. Lady Brennan's command echoed through the hall. You will have opportunity to speak. For now, Lady Victoria has the floor. I presented the medical evidence Dr. Helena had documented. Photographs of bruises, X-rays of healed fractures, testimony about malnutrition severe enough to be life-threatening. Then Margaret's written testimony, detailing abuse identical to mine. Financial records showing payments to the stable master before Catherine's death. The pattern is clear, I said. Edmund Blackwell systematically destroys the women he's betrothed to. He kept me weak and ignorant to prevent my wolf from awakening because a shifter with access to her abilities wouldn't be as easy to control. Corwin attempted a new angle. If the accused's actions were so terrible, why didn't you simply leave? Surely if you were genuinely in danger. I tried twice. I met his skeptical gaze without flinching. The first time, my family returned me with lectures about honoring commitments. The second time, Edmund found me and made it clear that leaving again would be fatal. When your own family won't protect you, when society tells you that marriage requires compromise, when the person hurting you is skilled at making everyone believe you're the problem, leaving becomes impossible. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several women in attendance had tears streaming down their faces. But someone finally asked the right question. I looked at Ronin, standing beside the throne. The Alpha King caught me when I fainted at the royal ball. He saw the bruises. And he asked, "Who hurt you?" Then he did something even more radical. He listened to the answer. He didn't dismiss me, didn't make excuses for Edmund, didn't tell me I was overreacting. He offered protection and believed me when I told the truth. Lady Brennan reviewed the evidence presented. Lord Blackwell, do you wish to testify in your own defense? Edmund stood, chains rattling. His practiced charm was gone, replaced by raw fury. She's a liar. A manipulative, ungrateful. You killed Catherine Whitmore. My interruption silenced him. You tortured Margaret Ashton until she fled. You spent 2 years systematically destroying me. And when I finally escaped, you hired assassins to murder both me and the Alpha King. I stepped closer to his box, letting my eyes flash gold. But you failed. You kept me weak for 2 years, and all you did was make me stronger. Edmund lunged against his chains, screaming obscenities that Lady Brennan had to gavel into silence. The verdict came swiftly. Guilty on all counts. The sentence was equally swift: life in Iron Gate Prison, title stripped, lands forfeit, no possibility of pardon or release. As guards dragged Edmund away, he made one final attempt. He broke free, lunging toward me with murder in his eyes. He didn't get close. Ronin moved with supernatural speed, intercepting him with a hand around his throat, lifting him effortlessly off the ground. The Alpha King's eyes burned wolf gold, his voice dropping to a lethal growl that reverberated through the hall. You will never touch her again. You will never speak her name. You are nothing. Edmund was removed from the hall, and justice, real justice, had finally been served. 3 months later, I stood on the palace balcony watching the full moon rise over the kingdom. So much had changed. I'd completed my first successful full shift 2 weeks ago, the wolf within me finally free after years of suppression. My fur was silver like moonlight, and running on 4 legs beneath the stars had felt like coming home. The laws had changed too. The royal tribunal had sparked kingdom-wide reform of marriage contracts, betrothal arrangements, and protections for those experiencing abuse. Ronan had appointed me to lead the initiative, not as his rescued victim, but as someone who understood the system's failures intimately. I heard him before I saw him, footsteps confident and familiar. Ronan joined me at the railing, his presence warm and solid beside me. We'd grown closer these past months, though both of us had been careful, respectful of my healing process. Regrets? He asked softly. I leaned into him, feeling the comfort of his presence. Not a single one. The Royal Council formally requested today that you accept the position of Queen Consort. His tone was careful, giving me space to refuse. Not just as my mate, but as a political figure advocating for the reforms you've begun. It would mean visibility, scrutiny, facing your trauma repeatedly as you fight to change the system. I turned to face him, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes. You don't have to decide now, he continued. You don't have to decide ever, if it's too much. Being my mate is enough, more than enough. I smiled, feeling fierce joy rise in my chest. I know I don't have to. That's exactly why I'm choosing to. I cupped his face, my touch confident and sure. Edmund wanted to make me invisible, inconsequential. Instead, I'm going to become impossible to ignore. I'm going to be your queen, Ronan. I'm going to stand beside you and remake the laws that failed me and every woman like me. Pride and love shone in his expression. Then the kingdom is fortunate to have you as queen. He kissed my forehead. And I'm the most fortunate male alive to have you as my mate. I was falling in love with you, I admitted, the words both terrifying and liberating. Not because you rescued me, but because you gave me the space to rescue myself. Because you see my strength even when I'm still finding it. I fell in love with your courage the moment you opened your eyes in my arms and chose to trust me with the truth. He cupped my face with infinite gentleness. I love you, Victoria Ashford. But I need you to know, you owe me nothing. Not gratitude, not affection. I kissed him, claiming the moment and the choice, feeling his sharp intake of breath against my lips. The kiss was tender but charged with the intensity of 2 people who'd suffered in isolation finding unexpected solace in each other. When we finally parted, both our eyes carried the wolf gold of bond recognition. I choose this, I whispered fiercely. I choose you. Not from obligation or gratitude, but because my wolf recognizes yours. Because my heart is my own to give, and I'm giving it freely. The mate bond snapped into place, not forced or fated, but chosen and earned. Hello friends. Before we part, I invite you to share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more tales of courage and reclamation. And remember, asking who hurt you, and then listening to the answer can save a life. Until next time. I looked out over the kingdom that was now mine to protect and serve. He asked who hurt me, I said quietly. But the better question is, who did I become when I finally stopped being hurt? The answer is, someone stronger than anyone, including myself, ever imagined. As the full moon rose fully, 2 wolves, one black as midnight, one silver as starlight, raced across the palace grounds together, equal in strength, partners in purpose, bound by choice rather than fate. Victoria had fallen before the Alpha King. But she'd risen as his queen, not because he lifted her up, but because he'd given her the space and safety to stand on her own.